The ultimatum arrived on a Tuesday, which was, in retrospect, the first mistake the Concordant Dominion ever made regarding the species called humanity. Not because Tuesday held any cosmic significance, but because the Dominion had no concept of Tuesday at all, and had therefore transmitted the most important document in the history of interspecies relations at a moment when roughly half the human defenders on the moon of Kaldrath were asleep. A third were arguing about the correct way to reconstitute powdered eggs. And the remaining fraction were watching a 200-year-old film about a submarine crew for the 9th consecutive time, because the entertainment archives had been corrupted during the retreat, and nobody had bothered to fix them. It arrived on a beam of coherent light so precise, so laden with redundant encoding and diplomatic formality, that it took the human relay station 40 full minutes to decode all of it. And when the decoding finished, the automated translation matrix printed the entire thing onto actual paper, because the officer who had programmed the matrix 3 years prior had a fondness for the tactile and had never expected the feature to matter. The paper spooled out of the printer in the operations center of Fortress Meridian, a squat and unlovely installation carved into the gray basalt of Kaldrath's northern highlands, and it kept spooling, because the Concordant Dominion did not believe in brevity. The document ran to 940 pages. Most of it was legal apparatus, the accreted sediment of 10,000 years of conquest, clauses and subclauses defining precisely how a lesser species was to acknowledge its own extinction as a sovereign entity, how it was to catalog its populations for resettlement, how it was to surrender its orbital infrastructure, its weapons, its history, its name. But the summary, mercifully, was on the first page, and it was short, because the Dominion had learned across 100 conquered worlds that lesser species could rarely be trusted to read past the summary. The summary read, "The Concordant Dominion, in its boundless mercy, extends to the human occupation of the Kaldrath system one standard cycle to effect complete and unconditional surrender. Resistance has been calculated. Resistance is futile. Submit and be preserved." Commander Ana Reyes was 26 years old, and she read this summary standing barefoot on the cold floor of the operations center at what her wrist chrono insisted was 3 in the morning, wearing a regulation undershirt and a pair of thermal leggings, holding a mug of the terrible reconstituted coffee that everyone drank and no one enjoyed. And she read it twice, and then she read it a third time, and then she laughed. It was not a small laugh. It was not the polite, disbelieving exhale that a person might produce upon reading something absurd. It came up from somewhere below her sternum, sudden and helpless and genuine, and it doubled her over so that she had to set the mug down on the console before she spilled it, and the 2 technicians on the night shift turned to look at her with the expressions of people who had just watched their commanding officer possibly lose her mind. "Ma'am," one of them ventured. His name was Okonkwo, and he was even younger than she was, 22, with a face that had not yet decided whether it was going to be handsome and had settled provisionally on earnest. Ana held up one finger, the universal gesture for "give me a moment," and tried to compose herself and failed and laughed again, wiping at her eyes. "They calculated it," she managed finally. "Okonkwo, they ran the numbers. Somewhere in that fortress of theirs there is a very serious individual who fed our entire situation into a machine, and the machine said we would surrender, and they believed it so completely that they sent us." She gestured at the paper still cascading out of the printer, now pooling on the floor, 900 pages of paperwork. "They didn't send a fleet. They sent a form. They expect us to fill out a form." Okonkwo looked at the paper. "Is it a bad form?" "It's a comprehensive form," Ana said, and this set her off again. And this time Okonkwo laughed too, and the other technician, a taciturn woman named Vasquez, allowed herself a small snort, and for a moment the operations center of Fortress Meridian, on a doomed moon at the far edge of a war humanity was losing, rang with the sound of three young people laughing at the certainty of an empire. The laughter was not stupidity. This is important to understand, because the Dominion never understood it, and the Dominion's failure to understand it was, in the end, the crack through which everything they had built poured out into the dark. The laughter was not the laughter of people who did not grasp their situation. Ana Reyes grasped her situation with perfect, terrible clarity. She knew that Kaldrath was cut off. She knew that the main human fleet had been shattered at the Battle of the Threshold Reach 8 weeks ago, and was regrouping somewhere she was not cleared to know, that no relief was coming, that Fortress Meridian held perhaps 4,000 souls and a moon's worth of stubbornness, and very little else. She knew that the Concordant Dominion could, if it chose, glass the entire moon from orbit and lose nothing but the resource value of the surface. She knew all of that. And she laughed anyway, because the thing about the form, the thing that was genuinely, cosmically funny, was that the Dominion had gotten the most important variable in their calculation exactly, perfectly wrong, and they did not even know it was a variable. They had calculated force. They had calculated supply lines and firepower, and the statistical likelihood of a rational actor choosing preservation over annihilation. And they had concluded, with the flawless logic of a species that had never once in 10,000 years met anyone who fought when the math said to quit, that humanity would sign. Ana picked up the first page of the document. She read the phrase "resistance has been calculated" one more time, and the last of the laughter went out of her, not because it stopped being funny, but because underneath the funny there was something hard and cold and useful, and she had learned in 3 years of war to hold onto that hard, cold thing with both hands. "Vasquez," she said, "wake the command staff, all of them, and get me a line to the deep array. I want to know if that transmission came from a ship or from somewhere planetside." "You're not going to sign it," Okonkwo said. It was not quite a question. Ana looked at him. He was 22, and he had been born on a colony world that the Dominion had annexed in the second year of the war, and his family was somewhere in that annexation, catalogued and resettled and preserved, and he had come to Kaldrath the long way, on a refugee transport, and had lied about his technical qualifications to get aboard, and had then learned the qualifications so thoroughly on the voyage that by the time anyone checked, he was genuinely one of the best relay technicians in the fortress. Ana knew all of this because she had read his file, because she read everyone's file, because they were her 4,000 souls, and she had decided that the least she could do was know who they were. "No," she said. "I'm not going to sign it. Because we can win." And here Ana Reyes did something that a lesser commander, or an older and more cautious one, might not have done. She told him the truth. "No," she said. "Not the way they mean win. Not if winning means the fleet comes back and we're all still standing on this rock waving flags. That's not on the table, and I'm not going to stand here and pretend it is, because you're not a child and I'm not going to lie to you." She set the page down. "But there's a difference between what we can't do and what we won't do, and the Dominion doesn't know the difference, and that ignorance is the only weapon we have that they can't calculate. So we're not going to sign the form. We're going to find out exactly what they think is going to happen, and then we're going to do the other thing." Okonkwo considered this. "What's the other thing?" "I don't know yet," Ana admitted, "but I'll tell you what it isn't. It isn't the thing they've already calculated." The command staff assembled 40 minutes later in the briefing chamber below the operations center, a low-ceilinged room that had once been a mineral survey office before the war repurposed it, and which still had, bolted to one wall, a beautiful and entirely useless diagram of Kaldrath's subsurface ore veins. Ana had grown fond of the diagram. She found that staring at it during difficult meetings gave her something to look at that was not the faces of people she was going to have to send into danger. There were 6 of them, not counting Ana. There was Major Idris, her second, who was 30 and steady as bedrock, and who had followed her from the wreckage of 3 previous postings without ever once questioning why he followed someone 4 years his junior. The answer being that Ana Reyes was very good at her job, and Idris was very good at recognizing it. There was Chief Engineer Sokolova, who ran the fortress's power and life support, and who regarded every rule of physics as a personal negotiating partner. There was Dr. Petrov, the ranking medical officer, whose job in this meeting was mostly to remind everyone that the 4,000 souls were made of soft and breakable meat. There was Lieutenant Osai, who commanded the ground defense, Ensign Bhattacharya, barely 20, who ran the sensor and intelligence section, and a civilian, an older woman named Margaret Ndiaye, who had been the elected administrator of the Kaldrath mining consortium before the war, and who had refused to leave when the evacuation ships came, and whom Ana had learned to listen to very carefully, because Margaret Ndiaye had spent 40 years managing 4,000 miners and knew things about keeping desperate people alive that no military academy taught. Ana laid the first page of the document on the table. She let them read it. She watched the laughter move around the room, saw it catch on Sokolova first and then Osai, saw Idris's mouth twitch, saw even Dr. Petrov shake his head with the exhausted amusement of a man who had stopped being surprised by the universe. Only Margaret Ndiaye did not laugh. She read the page and set it down and folded her hands and said, "They're going to be very angry when we don't sign it." "Yes," Ana said. "Not the ordinary kind of angry, the kind of angry that people get when reality has insulted them, when they were certain, and the certainty was wrong." Margaret looked up. "I ran a mine for 40 years, Commander. I have seen men do catastrophic things not because it profited them, but because the alternative was admitting they had misjudged. An empire that has calculated our surrender and printed us 900 pages of it, that is an empire that has never once been wrong about a thing like this. When we prove them wrong, they will not simply attack us. They will need to make an example of us. They will need the example to be so complete that the memory of it erases the insult." The room had gone quiet. "That's good," Ana said. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "No, I mean it. That's good. That's exactly what I want to know." Ana leaned forward over the table. "Because an enemy who needs to make an example isn't fighting to win. They're fighting to be proven right. And an enemy who's fighting to be proven right will do predictable things. They'll come at us in ways designed to be seen, to be recorded, to be beamed back to every conquered world as a lesson. They'll want it clean and total and theatrical. They won't want it fast or cheap or ugly, because fast and cheap and ugly doesn't teach anybody anything." She straightened. "Which means they'll give us time. Which means they'll come the way that looks best, not the way that works best. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a seam. That's a place we can put a knife." Idris was studying her with the particular attention he reserved for the moments when his commander was about to commit them all to something insane, and he had decided in advance to help. "You have a plan." "I have a shape of a plan," Ana corrected. "I have the outline of the place where a plan could go." "Bhattacharya, what came back on the deep array? Was that transmission from a ship or from the ground?" Ensign Bhattacharya, who had been fidgeting with the anxious energy of the very young in a room full of people they admired, sat up straight. "Ground, ma'am. Definitely ground. The transmission originated from the far side of the moon, the equatorial basin, the old Concordant survey site. They're not in orbit. They landed. There's a Dominion installation on Kaldrath, ma'am, and it's big, and by the power signature it's been there for at least 3 weeks." Ana went very still. 3 weeks, she said. "At least. They landed 3 weeks ago, dug in on the far side of our own moon, built an installation big enough to see from orbit, and then sent us a surrender demand." Ana began slowly to smile again, but it was a different smile than the one from the operations center. It had no laughter in it at all. "They're not planning to bombard us from orbit. If they wanted to glass us, they'd have done it 3 weeks ago. They landed. They want the moon intact. They want us intact enough to surrender properly, on camera, in front of the whole galaxy." She looked around the table. They didn't come to destroy Kaldrath. They came to accept our surrender in person. And they've been sitting on the far side of our own moon for 3 weeks, getting ready for a ceremony. The silence in the room had changed its character entirely. It was no longer the silence of people confronting their own deaths. It was the silence of people who had just been handed something and had not yet finished understanding what it was. "Sokolova," Ana said, "how much of Kaldrath's deep infrastructure still works? The tunnels, the old ore hauler network, the maglev lines, the survey shafts, all of it, everything the mining consortium ever cut into this rock." Chief Engineer Sokolova, who had been leaning against the wall with the diagram of ore veins directly behind her head, turned and looked at it as if seeing it for the first time. Then she looked back at Ana and something happened in her face, some slow ignition. "Commander," she said, "there are 9,000 kilometers of tunnel under this moon. The consortium spent 60 years cutting it. Most of it's dark. Half of it isn't on any current map." She paused. "Why do you want to know?" "Because they landed on the surface," Ana said, "and they think the surface is where the war is." She put her hand flat on the ore vein diagram's twin, the page on the table. "But we didn't come to Kaldrath for the surface. Nobody ever came to Kaldrath for the surface. The whole reason this rock matters, the whole reason there's a fortress here at all, is what's underneath." And the Dominion sat down on top of 9,000 kilometers of tunnels they can't see, and started planning a ceremony, and sent us a form. She looked around at her command staff, these 6 people, most of them younger than the war they were fighting. "So here's what we're going to do," Commander Ana Reyes said. "We're going to write them back." The reply that Fortress Meridian sent to the Concordant Dominion was 3 sentences long, and Ana Reyes composed it herself, and she made the command staff sit with each word until they were certain of it, because she understood something that would have surprised the Dominion's calculators very much, that the first message was not really a message at all. It was a probe. It was a stone dropped into a well to hear how deep the well was. What the Dominion did with 3 sentences would tell her more about the enemy than 900 pages had told her about anything. The reply read, "We have read your document in full. We decline. Please advise whether your ceremony will provide seating, as we are happy to attend as observers." "That last part," said Idris, reading it over her shoulder, "is going to make them insane." "That's the idea," Ana said. "I want to know what insane looks like on them. I want to see if they answer and how fast, and whether they answer the joke or ignore it. A machine ignores a joke. A person who's been embarrassed can't." She keyed the transmission. The Dominion sent 900 pages through a calculator. "Somewhere behind that calculator there's a person who's going to read the word observers and feel something. I want to find that person, because that person is who we're actually fighting." The reply came back in 4 hours, and it was not from a calculator. It arrived with none of the redundant encoding, none of the legal apparatus. It was a direct voice transmission, and it was an accented but fluent human standard, and the voice belonged to someone who had clearly spent time learning not just the words of humanity but the shape of the way humans thought, and who was, underneath a formality as smooth and cold as polished stone, absolutely furious. "To the human commander of the Kaldrath fortress," the voice said, "I am Assessor Prime Vol Tavas of the Concordant Dominion. I have read your reply. I confess I do not fully understand it, and I dislike not understanding things, so I will be direct, and I invite you to be direct in return. You are going to lose. This is not a threat and it is not a boast. It is arithmetic. I have personally reviewed the assessment of your position, and it is complete and it is correct, and it admits of no other outcome. I did not send you a fleet because a fleet is not required. I sent you the terms of your preservation, because your preservation is the only variable that remains within your control, and you have answered me with a joke about chairs." A pause. When the voice resumed it had changed, very slightly, and in that change Ana heard exactly what she had been listening for. I have accepted the surrender of 41 worlds, Commander. 41. And on every one of them when they understood the assessment they signed. Not because they were cowards, because they were rational. Because the assessment is designed to make refusal irrational, and it succeeds, and it has succeeded 41 times, and I have come to believe that the assessment is a kind of mercy, because it spares the rational the agony of hope. So I will ask you once, without arithmetic and without ceremony, as one person who bears responsibility for the lives of others to another, what do you think you are doing? The transmission ended. In the operations center, no one spoke for a long moment. Then Okonkwo quietly said, "He sounds tired." "He does," Ana agreed. "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know yet." Ana was staring at the frozen waveform of the transmission on the display as if she could read the Assessor Prime's face in it. 41 worlds. He's not lying about that. You don't say a number like that unless it's the number, unless you've counted it in the dark, unless it's a weight you carry. 41 worlds signed his paper, and he's proud of it, and he's ashamed of it, and he can't tell which. And he's never once had to wonder about it until now. Until 3 sentences about chairs, because for 41 worlds the arithmetic worked, and now for the first time the arithmetic is talking back. She turned. "He asked me what I think I'm doing." He actually asked. 41 worlds, and he never had to ask any of them anything, because they all did what the paper said. We're the first ones who made him curious. "So what do we tell him?" Idris asked. "Nothing, not yet." Ana pushed away from the console. "He wants a conversation. A conversation is a delay, and a delay is time, and time is the only thing on this rock we have more of than he thinks we do. We're going to answer him, but not for 4 hours. Let him sit with the chairs. And in the meantime," she turned to Sokolova, "Chief, I want a survey. Everyone we can spare who's ever held a scanning rig. I want to know exactly what's under this moon, and I want the map to be ours. And I want it before I send Assessor Prime Vol Tavas one more word." The survey took 9 days, and it was the beginning of everything. The Kaldrath Mining Consortium had spent 60 years cutting the moon hollow, chasing veins of a superconducting ore that had been, in the years before the war, one of the most valuable substances in the sector. They had cut wide hauling tunnels for the ore movers, and narrow survey shafts for the prospectors, and vast echoing caverns where the ore had run rich and been dug out entirely. And everywhere they had cut, they had laid infrastructure, power conduits, atmosphere processors, maglev rails, water reclamation, the whole subterranean nervous system of a mining operation that had once employed 30,000 people. And when the ore ran thin and the war came and the consortium collapsed, all of it had simply been abandoned in place, powered down, left in the dark, uncatalogued, forgotten by everyone except the 4,000 who now lived on the surface above it, and one civilian administrator who had spent 40 years of her life walking those tunnels, and knew them the way other people know the halls of a childhood home. It was Margaret Ndiaye who made the survey possible, and it was Margaret Ndiaye who first understood, before even Ana did, what the tunnels could become. She came to Ana on the 4th night of the survey, in the small hours, and she brought with her an old paper map, hand-annotated in 3 different colors of ink by 3 different generations of survey chiefs, and she spread it out on the table under the ore vein diagram, and she put her finger on a point in the equatorial basin, on the far side of the moon. "Here," she said, "this is where your Assessor Prime built his installation." "How do you know?" "Because it's the only flat, stable ground in the basin large enough for what your ensign described. I helped survey it 30 years ago. We wanted to sink a shaft there. We didn't because the rock underneath is honeycombed. There's a whole cavern system down there, old and unstable, and we judged it too dangerous to build on top of." Margaret looked up. "The Dominion did not judge it too dangerous because the Dominion does not have our maps. They landed on the flattest ground in the basin, and they have no idea that 1,100 meters beneath their installation there is a cavern system that we mapped and abandoned as unsafe 30 years ago, and that connects. Her finger traced a line across the map, through a spidering network of tunnels, all the way back to the highlands here, to us, under the whole moon. There is a road, Commander. An old, dark, dangerous road, and it runs from the basement of our fortress to the basement of their installation, and they don't know it's there. Ana looked at the line for a long time. How long is the road? She asked. 4,000 kilometers, more or less. It was never meant to be traveled end to end. Parts of it are collapsed, parts of it are flooded. The maglev hasn't run in 15 years and half the power's down. Margaret folded her hands. It would be the hardest thing anyone on this moon has ever done to make that road usable. It would take everything we have. And I am telling you about it, Commander, because I have been watching you for 9 days decide not to lie to these young people, and I have decided not to lie to you. That road is the only thing on Kaldrath the Dominion cannot calculate, because they do not know it exists. And a thing that does not exist cannot be in anyone's arithmetic. Ana Reyes was 26 years old, and she stood in a repurposed mineral survey office on a doomed moon, and she looked at a 4,000-kilometer road through the dark that no one had traveled in 15 years, and she felt the shape of the plan finally close its fingers around something solid. Margaret, she said, I need you to teach me the road. They answered Assessor Prime Vol Tavas on the 10th day, and Ana composed this reply as carefully as the first, because by now she understood the game they were playing, and she understood that the game itself was a weapon. Every hour Tavas spent talking to her was an hour he spent not attacking, and more than that, every hour he spent talking to her was an hour in which he became, incrementally, a person to her, and she became, incrementally, a person to him. And Ana had made a study of the fact that it is very hard to make an example of a person, and very easy to make an example of a statistic. 41 worlds had signed his paper without ever once making him hear a human voice ask about chairs. She was going to make sure he could never again pretend humanity was a number. Assessor Prime Tavas, she transmitted, you asked what I think I am doing. I have thought about it, and I will answer you honestly, because you asked honestly, and I think you are a person who can tell the difference, which is more than I can say for the machine that wrote your first letter. Here is what I think I am doing. I think I am declining to be rational in the specific way your arithmetic requires, and I think that this is the one move your arithmetic cannot account for, because your arithmetic assumes that everyone values the same things you do in the same order you do. You value preservation above all. You built a mercy out of that assumption, and it has worked 41 times. But I have to tell you, Assessor Prime, that you have finally met a people who put something above preservation, and I don't fully know how to explain it to you, except to say that we would rather be a story you can't calculate than a signature you can. You wanted directness. That's as direct as I know how to be. The chair's question stands. The reply came back in 3 hours this time, faster than before, and Ana noted the acceleration with satisfaction, because it meant Tavas was no longer able to make himself wait. Commander, Tavas said, and there was something new in the voice, a roughness, the sound of a man who had been arguing with himself. You speak of a thing you value above preservation as though it were a virtue. I have seen this thing. I have a name for it. On the 11th world I assessed, they also valued a thing above preservation, and they did not sign, and I watched what was done to them because I was required to watch, because the making of the example is part of the assessor's function. I did not enjoy it. I have never enjoyed it, but I learned from it that the thing you value above preservation is not a virtue. It is a way of ensuring that when the end comes, it comes to more people, more slowly and with more suffering. You imagine you are choosing to be a story. You are not. You are choosing to be a longer, worse version of the same ending. I am trying to spare you this. I do not know why I am trying to spare you this. I have not tried to spare anyone in a long time. But I find I do not want to make an example of the commander who asked about chairs, so I will extend your cycle. You have not one standard cycle now, but 3. Use them to reconsider, please." Ana listened to the transmission twice. Then she sat back, and she was quiet for so long that Idris finally asked what she was thinking. "He gave us 2 extra cycles," she said. "He didn't have to. He gave us 2 extra cycles because he doesn't want to be the man who made an example of us, and he thinks he's giving them to us out of mercy." She looked at the frozen waveform. "But 2 extra cycles is 60 extra days. And do you know what we can do with 60 extra days, Idris?" "Open the road," Idris said. "Open the road," Ana stood. "He thinks time is his gift to us. He thinks every day we don't sign is a day closer to the ending he's trying to spare us from. He can't imagine that time is the one resource that makes us more dangerous, not less, because in his arithmetic a defender who delays is just a defender who suffers longer." She began to gather the survey maps. "Sokolova, Osai, Margaret, wake everyone who's off shift. The Assessor Prime just gave us 60 days, and I want to spend every hour of it in the dark." The opening of the road was the hardest thing anyone on Kaldrath had ever done, exactly as Margaret Ndii had promised, and it very nearly killed a great many of them, and it changed the fortress into something it had not been before. They did it in shifts, around the clock, 4,000 people organized into the largest single undertaking any of them had ever been part of, and it began not with heroism but with pumps. The first 200 kilometers of the old road, the section closest to the fortress, ran through a stretch of tunnel that had flooded when the water reclamation failed a decade earlier. And before anyone could travel it, the water had to go somewhere. And Sokolova spent 4 days rigging a chain of salvaged pumps to move 11 million liters of freezing black water uphill into an abandoned cavern. And the pumps failed constantly. And the technicians who fixed them worked chest-deep in the dark in water cold enough to stop a heart, tethered to safety lines, in shifts of no more than 20 minutes because that was as long as a human body could function. And when the 200 kilometers finally drained, the mud beneath was a meter deep in places, studded with the corroded skeletons of abandoned ore movers, and the whole thing had to be shored and bridged and made passable meter by hand. Ana worked the pumps herself. She did not have to. A commander's place, the manual said, was in the operations center. But Ana Reyes had a theory about leadership that she had never written down and never spoken aloud, and the theory was this: that you could not ask 4,000 people to do the hardest thing they had ever done while you watch from a warm room, and expect them to do it with their whole hearts. So she took the 20-minute shifts in the freezing water alongside everyone else, and she was not good at it. She was cold and clumsy, and once she lost her footing and went fully under, and Okonkwo hauled her out by her safety line spitting black water and swearing, and the story of that went around the fortress by the next shift change, and something in the fortress changed when it did. Not because she had proven she was brave, because she had proven she was in it. That she was not a signature at the top of a form either. The maglev was Sokolova's obsession and Sokolova's triumph. 4,000 kilometers of tunnel could not be walked. It would take weeks each way, and Ana's plan, the shape of it that was slowly becoming solid, required moving not just people but mass, and quickly, and repeatedly. The old maglev line ran most of the length of the road, but it was 15 years dead, its power grid dark, its rails corroded, whole sections buried under collapse. Sokolova took a team of 40 and went into the dark and did not come back for 11 days, and when she came back she had the maglev running for 800 kilometers, and over the following weeks she extended it, section by section, cannibalizing power from the fortress's own reserves, rerouting, improvising, arguing with physics and winning more often than she lost, until at last there was a road, a real road, a dark and dangerous and improbable road, running 4,000 kilometers through the hollow heart of a moon, from the basement of the fortress to a cavern system, 1,100 meters beneath a Concordant Dominion installation whose occupants believed, with perfect and calculated confidence that they were standing on solid rock. And while the road opened, Ana kept Voltavas talking. This was, in its own way, as demanding as the pumps and the maglev, and Ana came to think of it as a second front, a war fought entirely with words, in which her objective was not to defeat the Assessor Prime, but to hold him, to keep him engaged and curious and reluctant, to make each transmission a small hook that lodged in him and made him wait for the next one. She was careful never to promise she would sign, because a lie would break the thread the moment it was discovered. She was careful never to refuse absolutely, because a flat refusal would end the conversation and free him to act. She lived in the narrow space between, and she filled it with the only thing she had that the Dominion had never encountered, a human being human, honestly, at length. She told him about the fortress, not its defenses. She was not a fool, but its people. She told him about Okonkwo, who had lost his family to an annexation and taught himself to be an engineer on a refugee ship. She told him about Sokolova, who negotiated with physics. She told him about Margaret, who had refused to leave. She told him about the 200-year-old submarine film that the whole fortress had now watched so many times that people quoted it in the corridors. And she explained, when he asked, that it was a story about a crew of humans trapped in a metal shell in a hostile deep, working together to survive, and that she supposed the reason they watched it over and over was that it made their own situation feel like something people had faced before and could face again. And Voltavas, slowly, told her things in return. He did not mean to. She could hear him not meaning to, could hear the Assessor's discipline fraying at the edges of each transmission. He told her about the 41 worlds, one at a time, until they stopped being a number and became 41 specific memories, each with its own weight. He told her about the assessment, how it had been developed, how it was meant to be a mercy, how he had believed in it once with the whole of himself. He told her, in a transmission he clearly regretted the moment he sent it, that he had a family of his own, on the Dominion homeworld, and that he had not seen them in 9 years, because the Assessor's function required him to travel from conquest to conquest, and that he had begun, lately, to wonder what the point of preserving 41 worlds had been if the preserving had cost him every world of his own. "You are doing something to me, Commander," he transmitted on the 31st day. "I am aware of it. I want you to know that I am aware of it. You are making me a person to yourself, and you are making yourself a person to me, and you are doing it deliberately, because you understand that I cannot make an example of a person as easily as I can make an example of a signature. I know this. I have assessed 41 worlds. I am not naive about manipulation. And yet knowing it does not stop it from working, and I find I do not entirely want it to stop. So I will tell you the thing I should not tell you. My superiors are growing impatient. I have extended your cycle twice on my own authority, and I cannot extend it a third time without explaining myself, and I do not know how to explain myself, because the true explanation is that I have come to like a commander I have never seen, and that is not a thing an Assessor Prime is permitted to feel. You have perhaps 20 days, Commander. After that, the decision leaves my hands, and it goes to people who have never spoken to you, and who will not ask you about chairs. Whatever you are doing, and I no longer believe you are doing nothing, you have 20 days to do it." Ana read that transmission in the operations center, and then she went down into the dark, all the way down, 4,000 kilometers on the maglev, to see the far end of the road for herself. It took 9 hours on the rebuilt line, and she rode most of it in silence, watching the tunnel walls strobe past in the running lights, old survey markings and abandoned equipment, and once, chillingly, a section where the consortium had simply walled off a collapse and painted a warning across it in letters 2 meters high. And at the end of the 9 hours, the maglev slowed and stopped in a cavern that Margaret's maps called Junction Deep, and Ana stepped off onto a platform that a work crew had spent 3 weeks building, and she looked up. Above her 1,100 meters of rock, and above that the Concordant Dominion installation. She could not see it, of course. But she could feel the fact of it, the way you can feel a held breath in a quiet room, and she understood for the first time viscerally what the road meant. Not an escape route, not a supply line. A knife, exactly as she had told the command staff on the first night, poised at the throat of an enemy who did not know the throat existed. Sokolova was waiting for her on the platform, filthy and exhausted, and lit up with the particular joy of an engineer who has done something impossible. "Come see," she said, and led Ana up through the cavern system, up through the honeycombed rock that Margaret had judged too unstable to build on 30 years before, up to a point that the survey team had marked with a single red lamp. "Here," Sokolova said, "this is the closest we can get. 240 meters of solid rock between this point and the lowest sublevel of their installation. We've had listening rigs pressed against the stone for a week. Commander, we can hear them. We can hear their machines. We know their shift patterns. We know where their power core is because we can hear it, a big fusion plant humming away right above us." She turned, and in the red light her face was fierce. They built their whole installation on the assumption that the only direction an attack could come from was the surface. Every gun they have points at the sky. Every sensor they have watches the horizon. And underneath them, 240 meters down, we have been sitting for a week, listening to them plan our surrender ceremony, and they have no idea we are here. Ana stood in the red light and listened, and after a moment she could hear it too, faint, transmitted up through 240 meters of rock, the deep, patient hum of a fusion core, the heartbeat of the empire that had sent her a form. "Sokolova," she said, "I need to know something, and I need you to tell me the truth, the way we tell each other the truth on this moon. If we wanted to bring this installation down, not damage it, bring it down, collapse it into the caverns underneath it, could we do it? From here, with what we have?" Sokolova was quiet for a moment. "The rock's already unstable," she said slowly. "That's why the consortium abandoned it. It's honeycombed, it's under stress, it wants to collapse. It's been wanting to collapse for 30 years, and the only reason it hasn't is that nothing's given it the push." She looked up, toward the 240 meters and the fusion core beyond it. "We wouldn't have to break their installation, Commander. We'd have to break the ground it stands on, and the ground is already broken. It's just waiting." She met Ana's eyes. "Yes, we could do it. It would take every gram of mining charge left in the consortium stores, and it would take precise placement, and it would take time we may not have. But yes, we could bring the whole basin down into the dark, and everything standing on it with it." Ana looked at the rack above her for a long time. "That's not what we're going to do," she said finally. Sokolova blinked. "Commander, we can do it. That matters that we can, but we're not going to." Ana turned away from the red lamp and started back down toward Junction Deep, and Sokolova hurried to follow. "Think about what Margaret said back at the start. They need to make an example. They need it clean and total and theatrical and seen. If we collapse their installation and kill everyone in it, we've given them their example, just pointed the other direction. We've become the thing that has to be erased." The rest of the Dominion never hears about a commander who asked about chairs. They hear about a moon that murdered a Concordant installation in the dark, and they send the fleet, the real fleet, and they glass Kaldrath from orbit and salt the memory, and everything we've built down here dies with us and means nothing. She stopped and turned, and in the dim light of the tunnel her face was very young and very certain. "We didn't open this road to win a massacre. We opened it to win an argument. The Assessor Prime asked me what I think I'm doing. I think I'm proving that his arithmetic is wrong. And you don't prove arithmetic wrong by killing the mathematician. You prove it wrong by showing him a number he can't account for and making him look at it and making him understand that it was always there, underneath everything, the whole time." She started walking again. "The road is the number, Sokolova. Now I have to figure out how to make him look at it." The plan that Ana Reyes finally assembled in the last 20 days before the decision left Vol-Tavaz's hands was not a plan to destroy the Concordant installation. It was a plan to walk into it. She explained it to the command staff in the repurposed survey office, under the ore vein diagram, and she watched their faces move from confusion to alarm to a slow dawning understanding. And it was Margaret Ndii again, who understood it first and fastest. "You're going to surrender," Margaret said. "You're going to accept his ceremony. You're going to walk into that installation and stand in front of their cameras and sign his paper." "No," Ana said. "I'm going to make him think that, and then I'm going to do something else in front of the cameras instead." She laid it out. The Assessor Prime wanted a ceremony, clean, total, theatrical scene. He wanted the human commander to come to the installation, in person, and surrender before the recording arrays that would beam humanity's capitulation to every conquered world in the Dominion. He had been building toward this ceremony for months. It was the entire point of the ground installation, the entire reason he had not simply glassed the moon. He did not want a dead world, he wanted a lesson, and a lesson required an audience and a stage and a defeated enemy who walked willingly onto it. "So we give him the stage," Ana said. "We accept the ceremony. I go to the installation in person above ground through the front door, exactly the way he wants, and I bring an honor detail with me, because a surrendering commander is entitled to an honor detail. It's in his own 900 pages, I checked. And the whole Dominion watches, every conquered world, every recording array pointed at me while I walk up to his table to sign his paper." She paused. "And while every eye in that installation and every camera in the galaxy is pointed at me walking through the front door, Sokolova brings 400 people up through the floor." The silence in the room was total. "Not to kill anyone," Ana went on. "That's the whole point. That's the thing they'll never see coming because their arithmetic can't imagine it. We come up through the floor of their own installation, into the middle of their own ceremony, in front of their own cameras, and we don't fire a shot. We just appear. 400 humans materializing out of solid rock that they proved was solid, standing in the heart of the fortress they built to be impregnable, while the whole galaxy watches. And then I turn to Assessor Prime Vol Tavas, in front of every conquered world he's ever assessed, and I tell him the truth, that we were under his feet the entire time, that we could have brought his whole installation down into the dark and killed every soul in it, and that we chose not to. That his arithmetic was wrong, not by a little, but completely, from the first assumption, and that the proof of it is standing in his ceremony hall having declined to murder him." Idris was the first to speak. "They'll kill you. The moment we come up through the floor, they'll open fire, and you'll be standing in the middle of it in the open." "They might," Ana agreed. "That's the real risk, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't because I don't lie to you people. But think about what they'd be doing if they fired. They'd be gunning down an unarmed surrendering commander and her honor detail, on camera, in front of 41 conquered worlds, after those worlds just watched 400 humans choose not to kill anyone. The whole point of the ceremony is the lesson, and the lesson they'd be teaching if they fired is that the Dominion murders people who come in peace and shows mercy. That's not a lesson that ends resistance. That's a lesson that starts it everywhere all at once." She looked around the room. "Tavas will understand that in the moment. I'm betting everything on the fact that Tavas will understand it because I've spent 30 days making sure Tavas is a person who can understand it. He's not a machine. That's the whole reason I kept him talking. When the floor opens and 400 humans stand up out of the rock, there's going to be one instant where everything hangs on what one tired, curious, decent Assessor Prime decides to do. And I've spent a month making him someone who decides not to shoot." "And if you're wrong about him?" Dr. Petrov asked quietly. "Then I'm wrong and it goes very badly, and I'll be the first one it goes badly for because I'll be the one standing in the open." Ana said it without drama. "I'm not asking anyone to do this who doesn't understand that. Everyone who comes up through that floor comes as a volunteer, knowing exactly what the risk is. But I'll tell you what I believe, and I believe it enough to stand in the open myself." I believe that the Concordant Dominion has conquered 41 worlds because it has never once been made to look at the moment of its own choosing. It hides its choices inside arithmetic. The assessment chooses, the paper chooses, the calculation chooses, never a person. And I think that if you force a person, one real person, to stand in front of the whole galaxy and choose in the open, with no arithmetic to hide behind, between murdering people who spared him and admitting his empire was wrong, I think a decent person chooses to be wrong. And I think Tavas is a decent person who has spent 9 years being a machine, and I think he is exhausted, and I think, more than anything in the galaxy, he wants permission to stop. The volunteers numbered not 400, but 1,100. Every soul in the fortress who could walk and hold a line volunteered, and Ana had to turn most of them away, because the caverns beneath the installation could stage 400 and no more, and because someone had to hold the fortress, and because she did not say this part aloud. If the gamble failed, she wanted as many of her 4,000 as possible to survive to carry the story, because a story that survives is a kind of victory even when everything else is lost. The final preparations took the full 20 days. Sokolova's teams cut and shored the assault shafts, not blasting them, which would have alerted the listening arrays she was certain the Dominion did not have but refused to assume they lacked, but boring them, slowly, silently, through the last 240 meters of rock. 4 separate shafts angled to emerge at 4 separate points across the installation's lower ceremony hall, each capped with a final meter of rock left deliberately intact, to be broken through only at the appointed moment. The timing was rehearsed until 400 people could move through 4 kilometers of tunnel and be in position beneath the ceremony hall within a 2-minute window. And Ana selected her honor detail, 12, the maximum the surrender protocols allowed, and she chose them herself, and Okonkwo was the first name on the list, and when she told him he did not hesitate, and she loved him for not hesitating and hated herself a little for making him choose. And she sent Tavas her acceptance. She composed it on the 18th day, and it was the hardest transmission she had ever written, because it had to be a lie, and she had promised herself she would not lie to him, and she found a way to keep the promise inside the lie that satisfied her and would, she hoped, satisfy something in him when he understood it later. Assessor Prime Tavas, she transmitted, I accept your ceremony. I will come to your installation in person with an honor detail as your protocols allow on the day your cycle ends, and I will stand before your recording arrays and give the Concordant Dominion the answer it has been waiting for. I want you to know that I have thought about everything you told me, about the 41 worlds, about your family, about the mercy you believe your arithmetic to be. I have thought about all of it, and I am coming to your ceremony because of it, not despite it. You wanted directness from me, and so I will be as direct as I can be within the constraints I am under. What happens in your ceremony hall is going to be the truest thing I know how to do. I hope, when it is over, that you will believe I never lied to you. The chair's question is withdrawn. I trust there will be somewhere for me to stand. The reply came back within the hour, and it was short, and Ana kept it, and read it many times afterward in the years that followed. Commander, Tavas transmitted. Thank you. I do not know entirely what I am thanking you for, but I find that I am relieved, and I did not expect to be relieved, and I have spent the afternoon trying to understand why the relief feels so much like grief. I will see that there is somewhere for you to stand. I will see that you are treated with honor. Whatever else the arithmetic required, you asked me about chairs when no one on 41 worlds ever asked me anything at all, and I have decided that this was a kindness, and I mean to answer it with one. Come to my ceremony, Commander. I confess I am curious what you will do. I have been curious since the first day. I think that curiosity may be the thing you woke in me, and I think it may be the most dangerous thing anyone has ever done to me, and I find I cannot bring myself to regret it. Until the appointed day. Ana read it, and she was quiet for a long time, and then she folded the transcript and put it in the breast pocket of the dress uniform she would wear to the ceremony, over her heart, where it would be when she stood in his hall. "He knows," Idris said, watching her. "Not the details, but he knows you're going to do something." "He knows," Ana agreed. "He's known for weeks. He's known, and he's kept talking to me anyway, and he's extended my cycle twice, and he's given me an honor detail and somewhere to stand, and he keeps telling me he's curious." She touched the pocket over her heart. "He's not a fool, Idris. He's a decent man who spent 9 years serving an empire that made him into an instrument, and somewhere in the last 30 days he decided that he would rather find out what I'm going to do than stop me from doing it. That's not a man I'm tricking. That's a man who's holding the door open and pretending not to." She turned toward the maglev platform, where 400 volunteers were already loading for the long ride into the dark. "Which means I can't waste it. Whatever happens in that hall, I have to make it worth the door he's holding open. I have to give him something better than the empire he's tired of serving. That's the real gamble. Not whether he shoots. Whether, when I show him the number his arithmetic couldn't hold, I can make him want a different arithmetic more than he wants the one he knows." There were things that happened in the 60 days of the road that never made it into the recordings, and never made it into the story Ana told afterward, because they were too small or too private or too painful. And yet they were the true substance of the thing, the way the mortar is the true substance of a wall that everyone remembers for its stones. There was the night on the 19th day, when a section of the drain tunnel collapsed without warning while a work crew was shoring it, and 3 people were trapped behind a wall of fallen rock, and Sokolova's teams dug for 11 hours to reach them. And when they broke through, 2 were alive and 1 was not. And the one who was not was a 19-year-old named Corrigan who had volunteered for the deep shifts because he had told his crewmates he wanted to do something that mattered before the end came. And Ana had gone down 4,000 kilometers on the maglev to be there when they brought his body out, because she had decided long before that she would not be the kind of commander who let the dark swallow her people while she stayed warm above. She stood at junction deep in the red light and she spoke over him, and she did not lie, and she did not pretend his death had been necessary or noble, only that it had been in service of something she believed in, and that she would carry it, and that she was sorry. And the work crews watched her carry it, and they went back into the dark, and the road advanced, and this too was part of how a garrison of 4,000 became something that could crack an empire. Not because they were fearless, but because they had a commander who refused to spend their lives cheaply and refused to hide when the spending came anyway. There was the matter of the coffee, which sounds absurd and was not. On the 28th day, the fortress's last stores of real coffee ran out, and there was only the terrible reconstituted powder left, and this small deprivation landed on the exhausted crews harder than any of the large ones, the way small deprivations do when people are already carrying too much, and morale, which had been holding, began to fray. And it was Okonkwo, of all people, who solved it. Okonkwo, who spent one of his precious off-shifts disassembling a water reclamation heat exchanger, and rebuilding it into a device that roasted the reconstituted powder in a way that made it, if not good, then at least honest, then at least something a person could drink and feel briefly human over. He set it up in the mess and called it, with the flat humor that Ana had come to depend on from him, the morale reactor, and people lined up for it, and they talked while they waited, and the talking was as valuable as the coffee. Ana watched this happen and understood that Okonkwo had done something she could not have ordered anyone to do, and she made a note of it. And later in the hall, when she chose him first for the honor detail, this was part of why. There was the long argument with Idris, on the 40th day, when Idris finally said aloud the thing he had been carrying, which was that he thought the plan was going to get her killed, and that he did not know how to lead the fortress if she died, and that he was not sure the fortress should be led by anyone who let its commander walk into a concordant installation to gamble 4,000 lives on the decency of an alien. And Ana had not argued him down with logic, because there was no logic that resolved it, only a wager and a belief. She had told him, instead, the truth about why it had to be her who walked into the hall. "Because I'm the one he's been talking to," she said. "I'm the one who asked about chairs. If I send someone else to stand in the open, then it's just a trick. We tricked our way into his hall and sprang a surprise. But if I go myself, the one he's come to know, the one whose people he's heard about, then it's not a trick anymore. It's a person keeping her word in the only way she can and standing in the open to prove she means it. He'll see the difference, Idris. He'll see it in the first instant. And the whole thing hangs on that instant." And Idris had looked at her for a long time, and then he had said, quietly, that he would hold the fortress if it came to that, and that he hoped to God it did not come to that. And Ana had said she hoped so too, and neither of them had said anything else, because there was nothing else to say. And the next morning the road advanced. And there was the thing that Margaret Ndai said to Ana on the last night before the ceremony, which Ana never repeated to anyone, and which she thought about for the rest of her life. Margaret had come to her quarters late, and she had brought 2 cups of Okonkwo's honest, terrible coffee, and she had sat down across from Ana and said, without preamble, "You're not doing this because you think it will work." Ana had considered denying it. She had not. "I think it will work," she said. "I've built everything I can to make it work, but no." "That's not why." "Then why?" And Ana had looked at the older woman who had refused to leave her moon, who had walked its tunnels for 40 years, who had understood the road before anyone else because she had understood the moon, and she had told her the thing she had not told even Idris. "Because I would rather lose doing this than win doing nothing," she said. "Because we are probably going to lose this war no matter what happens in that hall. Kaldrath is 1 moon, and the Dominion is 10,000 years of empire. And I'm not so young that I think one gamble on 1 moon reverses 10,000 years. But I have 4,000 people who are going to be a footnote in somebody's history either way, and I get to choose what the footnote says. It can say they held out for a while and then they surrendered, like 41 worlds before them. Or it can say they walked up through solid rock into the heart of the empire and chose not to kill anyone and told the whole galaxy why. I know which footnote I'd rather be, and I've decided that if the choice is between a small, ugly survival and a story that might mean something to someone I'll never meet on a world that hasn't surrendered yet." She had turned her cup in her hands. "I'll take the story. Not because I'm brave, because I've done the arithmetic too, Margaret, my own kind, and my arithmetic says the story is worth more than the survival. That's the thing Tavas can't calculate. It's not that we don't count. It's that we count different things." Margaret had been quiet for a long moment. Then she had said, "My husband died in the 3rd year of the mine in a collapse doing something that didn't strictly need doing, helping a crew that wasn't his. I was angry about it for 20 years. I thought he'd thrown himself away." She had set down her cup. "It took me until I was old to understand that he'd chosen what the footnote said, same as you, that the helping was the point, not the surviving. I came to Kaldrath to die on the moon where he did, Commander. I'll be honest with you since we're being honest. I didn't expect to find someone here who'd make the dying feel like something other than surrender." She had stood. "Go to the hall. Show your Assessor Prime his number. And whatever happens, you should know that there's at least 1 old woman on this moon who understands exactly what you're doing, and thinks her husband would have understood it too." She had left, and Ana had sat alone with the 2 empty cups until the chrono told her it was time to dress for the ceremony, and she had put on the uniform with the transcript in the breast pocket, and she had gone down to the maglev platform where the 400 waited, and she had not felt brave exactly, but she had felt certain, in the particular way that has nothing to do with knowing you will win and everything to do with knowing you are doing the thing you can stand behind. All of this was underneath the ceremony. All of this was underneath the empty hands and the opened floor and the number shown to 41 worlds. The recordings caught the stones. They could not catch the mortar, the drained water and the dead 19-year-old and the honest coffee and the argument with Idris and the old woman's husband who chose what the footnote said. But the mortar was there, holding it all up, and Ana carried it into the hall with her, and it was in her voice when she told Vol-Tavas to lower the weapons. And some part of the reason he did, some part that no arithmetic could ever have predicted, was that he could hear it, that he could hear, in the voice of the young commander standing in his cathedral with empty hands, the weight of every small true thing that had built the road, and that he recognized it. Because he had been carrying small true things of his own for 9 years with no one to help him hold them, and here at last was someone who understood exactly how heavy they were. The day of the ceremony arrived cold and clear, the way most days on Kaldrath's surface arrived, the black sky overhead crowded with stars, and the pale bulk of the gas giant Kaldrath orbited hanging low above the horizon like a watching eye. Ana Reyes rode to the Concordant installation in an unarmed human crawler, above ground, across 400 kilometers of gray basalt highland, with her 12, and she watched the installation grow on the horizon from a smudge to a shape to a fortress, and she understood as she approached it exactly why the Dominion had never once imagined an attack from below. It was magnificent. It rose from the equatorial basin in tiers of dark metal and light, ringed with weapon emplacements that tracked the crawler's approach, crowned with the great disarrays that would, within the hour, beam humanity's surrender to 41 worlds. Every line of it was designed to be seen, to be recorded, to overwhelm, a machine not merely for warfare but for the production of certainty, of the specific certainty that resistance was futile and submission was mercy, and the Concordant Dominion was the only rational shape the future could take. It was, Ana thought, the most honest thing the Dominion had ever built, because it wore its whole philosophy on the outside. We are inevitable, and we will make you watch. They were received with honor, exactly as Tavas had promised. An escort of Concordant soldiers in ceremonial armor met the crawler and conducted Ana and her 12 through the great outer gates and down, through corridors lined with more soldiers standing at attention, down into the heart of the installation, to the ceremony hall itself. And the ceremony hall took Ana's breath, because she had rehearsed this moment 100 times in her mind, and none of the rehearsals had prepared her for the scale of it. It was vast, a cathedral of dark metal, tiered like an amphitheater, and every tier was lined with recording arrays, hundreds of them, their lenses turning to track her as she entered, and she knew that behind each lens was an audience of billions, 41 conquered worlds and the Dominion homeworld and every station and colony and fleet in between, all watching, all waiting to see a human commander walk to the center of the hall and surrender. And in the center of the hall, at a simple table, alone, stood Assessor Prime Vol-Tavas. He was not what she had imagined. She had built a picture of him from 30 days of his voice, and the picture had been of someone large and grave, and the reality was smaller, older, his frame stooped under the weight of ceremonial robes, his face, insofar as she could read a face so different from her own, lined with an exhaustion that no ceremony could disguise. He watched her cross the hall toward him, and she watched him, and neither of them looked at the cameras, and when she reached the table he inclined his head to her with a gravity that she understood was real, was meant, was the honor he had promised. "Commander Reyes," he said, and his voice in person was the voice she knew. "You came." "I said I would." "You did," he studied her. "I have thought a great deal in these last hours about what you are going to do. I have not been able to imagine it. I want you to know that I have not warned anyone. I have not increased the guard. I have not scanned your detail beyond what protocol requires. Whatever you have brought into my hall, Commander, you have brought because I chose to let you." His eyes, she thought of them as eyes, held hers. "I do not know why I chose that. I have decided to find out." The recording arrays hummed. The 41 worlds watched. And Ana Reyes, 26 years old, standing in the heart of the empire that had come to erase her people, reached up and touched the pocket over her heart where his transcript lay and gave the signal. It was not loud. That was the thing that no one who watched the recordings ever forgot, that it was not violent, that there was no explosion, no gunfire, no scream. There was only, across the floor of the great ceremony hall, in 4 places at once, a sudden fine cracking of the dark metal, a sound like ice breaking on a spring lake, and then the floor opened in 4 neat circles, and out of the solid rock that the whole Dominion had proven was solid, out of the ground beneath the impregnable installation, human beings began to climb. They came up unarmed. Ana had ordered it, over Idris's objections, over Osai's, over the objection of nearly everyone. The 400 came up carrying nothing but themselves. They climbed out of the 4 shafts and they stood, and they kept coming, and coming, until 400 human beings stood in the heart of the Concordant Dominion's Cathedral of Certainty, having come up through 1,100 meters of rock and 4,000 kilometers of dark, and they did not fire a shot, and they did not make a sound, and they simply stood, and let the cameras see them. The Concordant soldiers reacted the way soldiers do. Weapons came up. The hall filled with the whine of charging arms and shouted commands, and the specific chaos of a defended position discovering it has been penetrated from a direction that was declared impossible. And for one instant, the instant Ana had bet everything on, the instant she had spent 30 days building toward, the entire hall hung on a single point of decision: 400 unarmed humans and 1,000 armed soldiers and 41 watching worlds, and every weapon in the hall waiting for the word. The word belonged to Voltaves. Ana did not look at the soldiers. She did not look at the 400. She looked only at the Assessor Prime, and she spoke, and she pitched her voice not for him but for the cameras, for the 41 worlds, for the billions. Assessor Prime Tavas, she said, we have been beneath your feet for 2 months, under this hall, under this installation, under everything you built to be impregnable. We mapped the road before you ever landed, because it is our moon and you only rented the surface. We could have brought this installation down into the dark on the first day. We could have done it during your ceremony with the cameras running and killed every soul in this hall, and no one in the galaxy would ever have known it was anything but an accident of unstable ground. She let that sit, let the 41 worlds hear it, let the soldiers with their raised weapons understand it. We chose not to. We came up through your floor with empty hands in front of your own cameras to prove one thing and one thing only. Your arithmetic was wrong, not because you counted badly, because you counted the wrong thing. You calculated whether we would surrender. You never once calculated whether we would spare you. And the answer to the question you never asked is standing in your hall with empty hands. The hall was silent. The weapons had not lowered, but they had not fired. You told me, Ana said, and now she did speak to him, only to him, though the cameras carried it to the ends of the Dominion, that the thing we value above preservation is not a virtue, that it only ensures the ending comes to more people, more slowly, with more suffering. You were describing revenge, Assessor Prime. You have only ever seen us choose revenge, because you have only ever met us at the moment of our destruction, when revenge was all we had left. But that is not the thing we value above preservation. This is, she gestured to the 400, the empty hands, the ground they had come up through, and the deaths they had declined to deal. We value the choice not to. We value being the people who could bring the roof down and didn't. That is the number your arithmetic could never hold, because your arithmetic was built by an empire that only knows how to count force, and force cannot measure the moment a person chooses to spare an enemy who expected to be spared by no one. She held out her empty hands. So I am not going to sign your paper, and I am not going to bring down your hall. I am going to stand here, in front of 41 worlds, and offer you the one thing the Concordant Dominion has never once been offered in 10,000 years of conquest. I am going to offer you the chance to be wrong, in public, on purpose, and live. Lower the weapons, Vol, and let's find out what happens after arithmetic. For a long moment, nothing. And then Assessor Prime Voltaves began, very quietly, to laugh. It was not a large laugh. It was small and broken and astonished, the laugh of a man who has carried a weight for 9 years and felt, for the first time, someone else's hands come under it. And he raised one arm slowly in full view of the recording arrays, and he made a gesture that every concordant soldier in the hall understood, and across the vast dark cathedral of certainty, one by one, the weapons came down. "Stand down," Voltavas said, and his voice carried to the 41 worlds. "In the name of my authority as Assessor Prime, which I am about to lose, stand down." He looked at Ana, and there was something in his exhausted face that she would spend years trying to name and never quite manage, except that it was the opposite of certainty, and it looked like relief, and it looked like grief, and it looked most of all like a man who had been given permission to stop. "You asked me about chairs," he said, "when no one on 41 worlds ever asked me anything at all. I told you, I decided it was a kindness. I have decided now that it was the first true thing anyone said to me in 9 years. He turned toward the cameras, toward the 41 worlds, toward the billions who had gathered to watch humanity surrender and had watched instead something for which the Dominion had no word. "The assessment," he said, "was wrong. I have served it for 9 years, and I am telling you now, on my authority before I lose it, that it was wrong from the first assumption, and the proof of it is standing in this hall with empty hands, having declined to kill me. Make of that what you will. I intend to spend whatever life I have left making something of it myself." The recordings of what came to be called the ceremony of empty hands were beamed to 41 worlds that day, and could not be recalled, and the Concordant Dominion learned that some numbers once shown cannot be unshown. It did not end the war that afternoon. Wars do not end in afternoons. But Assessor Prime Voltavas was recalled in disgrace, and refused to go quietly, and he carried the recording with him, and he was not the only assessor in 10,000 years to be tired, and the number Ana Reyes had shown him in the hall turned out to be a number that spread world to world, the way a crack spreads through stone that has been waiting 30 years to break. Within 2 years, the assessment was abandoned across a third of the Dominion. Within 5, the empire that had never once been made to look at its own choosing had become something that had to ask on world after world the question Voltavas asked in the hall, and could no longer hide the asking inside arithmetic. Ana Reyes went home to a fleet that had regrouped, and a war that had turned, though the turning took years, and she never rose to admiral, because she declined every promotion that would have taken her away from the people she commanded, and she kept in the breast pocket of every uniform she ever wore a folded transcript that ended with the words "until the appointed day." And when they asked her, in the years afterward, how a doomed garrison on a hollow moon had cracked an empire that had conquered 41 worlds, she always told the same story, and she always started it the same way, with the 900 pages and the terrible coffee and the 3 in the morning laughter, because that was where it truly began. "They expected us to surrender," she would say. "They ran the numbers and they were certain, so certain they sent us a form instead of a fleet, and we read their form and we laughed, not because we didn't understand it, but because we understood it perfectly, and we could see the one thing they'd forgotten to count. They forgot to ask whether we'd spare them. So we spent 2 months building a road through the dark to place under their feet, and then we came up empty-handed in the middle of their own ceremony, and we showed them the number their whole empire was too certain to see." She would smile then, the old smile, the one with the hard thing underneath it. "The empire expected humanity to surrender. Instead we burst out laughing, and then we made the whole galaxy understand exactly what we were laughing at. Ourselves a little, but mostly them. Mostly the beautiful, tragic certainty of an empire that could count every gun in the sky and never once thought to look down.